Thank you, sisters and brothers. Welcome, brothers, sisters, delegates, guests, and friends. What an amazing gathering. Our convention is at the heart of our democratic movement and represents here today is the heart and soul of our movement. You, the movers and shakers, the rank and file leaders, the 3.3 million members, the 54 affiliates, 56 affiliates, because 2 more just became part of our family as of Friday. From coast to coast, we're the largest democratic organization in this country, and we are the most important social movement in this country. We do not take that for granted. Over the next 4 days, we will consider the state of our movement. We will be accountable, and we'll be debating the ways forward for working people throughout this country. But more importantly, we will leave this hall 4 days from now united behind a plan that will realize the promise of progressive change and secure the rights of workers across this country that they deserve. We will leave the hall committed to speaking out, advocating and fighting for all workers in Canada, whether they're union members or not. And we will show Canadians, no matter where they were born, what faith you hold, who you love, what race, gender, or ability, you can count on the Canadian Labour Movement to defend your human rights in this country. Sisters and brothers, last Friday and again this morning, we said goodbye to a great friend and a great leader, Bob White. He was a giant among us. He showed us what it meant to live by our principles in the service of working people. We stand at the shoulders of Bob White and so many before him. We are all aware that the well-being of the next generation is what drives us all. To be part of the magic of this movement, the constant renewal that brings new energy and new leadership. So let's welcome to this convention the new delegates and the young delegates. If you're a first-time delegate, or if you're a young worker under 30 years of age, please stand up and be recognized. Thanks, my friends. Now, when we look back to where we were when we left the Montreal Convention just 3 years ago and where we are today, we cannot deny the scope and pace of change. But don't get me wrong, sisters and brothers, we're not home free yet. 3 years ago, we stood on stage just weeks away from a landmark election in Ontario, where one of the key ballot questions in this province was a pledge by the Conservative leader Tim Hudak to rip up the RAND formula and fire 100,000 public sector workers and to bring some form of right to work in this province. Stephen Harper was ruling over our country. To satisfy his ideology-driven base, made it his mission to attack the trade union movement and workers' rights and freedoms in this country. His government took action to break and prevent strikes from workers, airline workers, railway workers, and postal workers. The federal public sector was decimated with jobs and program cuts. He tried to eliminate, of course, card check provision in the Canada Labour Code, a provision that stood 70 years of time. And Bill 377, he was determined to single out the trade union movement for financial disclosure, which was to cripple our ability to organize and do our political work. Well, sisters and brothers, we did not stand idly. We kicked his right-wing ass out of office as we did the same thing to Tim Hudak in the province of Ontario. That's the strength of our movement. When you look at what we also did in Alberta, for the first time in the history of this country, to elect a new Democrat government, a progressive government. because we work hard, you and me and all of us in this convention. It has to mean something when both the federal opposition parties in the federal election adopted our platform. It has to mean something when the first order of business of the new federal government was to repeal the anti-union legislation that brought in by the Conservative. If not this week, my friends, next week, we will bury 377 and restore car certification to federal jurisdiction. Sisters and brothers, it's also an important election that will happen in BC this week, where we hope our friend John Horrigan will be the new Premier of British Columbia. Who could say that fighting back, building coalitions, protesting and organizing politically does not make a difference? Not only are we still standing up for our rights intact, but in fact the trade union rights in this country has been strengthened by the Supreme Court of our land in 2015 and 16. Sisters and brothers, if you were to tell me in 1982 that some of the things we have won in 2015 and 16 would be protected by a constitution, I would say you were completely mad. But as a result of our action, or coordinated action in the Supreme Court of Canada, the right to join a union is now a fundamental right protected by our Constitution. The right to organize and to bargain collectively, and the right to go on strike is a chartered right that no government can take away from working people in this country ever again. We also won the right because we decided to intervene in the courts to say you cannot treat a non-unionized worker differently than a unionized worker. It was an important victory for us. Yes, and the BC teachers' case to the Supreme Court that made history, that the right of public sector to bargain the service they provide is a fundamental right protected by the Constitution of this country. Sisters and brothers, that's what we won. We know we cannot rest on our laurels, and government will continue to threaten us. But we know the Supreme Court decisions have opened up new spaces for us to do our work and to build and grow our movement. It is clear the decisions cannot be undermined, but equally important, they are obligation to facilitate of workers to exercise these rights. Sisters and brothers, when the opportunity to make history knock, we will answer. We still have much work to do. The gap between the rich and the poor in this country have widened. Over the last 30 years, we have witnessed an increased concentration of income and wealth in the hands of a small elite. A recent report by Oxfam Canada shows that today, just 8 men own the same amount of wealth as half the world. Think about that for a minute. 8 men own the same amount of wealth as 3.6 billion people who make up the poorest half of the world population. That's the reality. Income and wealth inequality is also soared in our own country. Since the early 1980s, income of the super rich in Canada have exploded, while the middle class stagnated with their wages for over the last 30 years. In our country, the top 1% of tax filers now receive a fully 14% of all incomes earned in this country. That's up sharply from 8% in the early 1980s. We are now almost back to where we were just before the Great Depression, where the top 1% of our country control 18% of all income. The labor movement must continue to fight to ensure that wealth is distributed fairly in our country and prosperity is shared broadly. We need a progressive tax system. It's the most important tools in achieving this goal. And your Congress will continue to fight to making tax fairness a fundamental part of our political work going forward. On behalf of the workers and families, the CLC will push to make sure the wealthiest in our nation, 1%, and profit corporations pay their fair share. And we will push our federal government to combat tax evasion and offshore tax haven. 1 in 7 Canadians in this country, that's about 5 million, still live in poverty in our great nation. This includes some 1.3 million children in Canada living in poverty today. More than 860,000 Canadians turn to food bank for help every single month in our great country. And 36% of them are children and youth. New immigrant families, racialized families, and family with disabilities are much more likely to live in poverty in our country. Sisters and brothers, we need a comprehensive anti-poverty reduction. This includes improvements to income supplement like unemployment insurance. Today, less than 40% of the unemployed receive benefits. An essential step in reducing income inequality and lifting workers out of poverty is to introduce $15 minimum wage, but both federally and provincially. And the CLC will continue to work with our Federations of Labour and our Labour Council to achieve this objective. Across this country, minimum wage falls short of living full-time workers in this country. Today, some 3.5 million workers work for less than $15 minimum wage in this country. Raising the minimum wage will be the smart thing to do. Raising the minimum wage will put billions of dollars back into the economy and workers' pockets, will help give them a decent standard of living. And I'm so proud of Rachel Notley, the Premier of Alberta, to commit it to a $15 minimum wage. Our friend John Horrigan, who's campaigning to be the next BC Premier, has pledged if he becomes the Premier of British Columbia, he will bring in a $15 minimum wage. Andrea Horvath, right here in this province, our NDP friends have pledged to do exactly the same things. Sisters and brothers, it's also about fighting for the principle that all human beings have the right to a decent standard of living and the right to live in dignity and freedom. On trade policy, our movement continues to work to promote free trade. We want labour and environmental agreements to be strengthened within these agreements. We want to eliminate, of course, the dispute mechanism where corporations are allowed to sue our government. We want to protect the existing public service, and we want to ensure the sectors now exempt from NAFTA will not be included in any renegotiations of NAFTA. If this government takes the same approach into NAFTA with Donald Trump, we are in deep trouble, my friends. We have a lot to lose, not because NAFTA is a pro-Canadian or pro-worker, because NAFTA could get a lot worse. Currently, softwood lumber is outside of NAFTA despite the promises that was made. Culture and media is outside of NAFTA. Our agriculture marketing agencies are outside of NAFTA. Under Chapter 11, we are the most sued country in the world. And now it could get even worse. Frankly, I'm deeply worried of what could happen in the renegotiation. So I have a suggestion. There are quite a few people in this room who know how to negotiate and who understands the implication of a deal on the lives and jobs of working people in our country. So here is my message to our Prime Minister. I want to volunteer the service of the trade union leadership for the Canadian NAFTA renegotiating team. For every single corporate leader advising the Prime Minister, we will send you one of our own to advise you. And that's the deal he should not refuse, my friends, because one thing we know, we've got a lot of smart people of our movement. We need to recognize them. Sisters and brothers, our future is not a hopeless one. We can win battles, and we have proven that over the last year. In 2016, as a result of our effort, we have seen, of course, the rolling back of OAS and GIS from 67 back to 65 because of the political work we did in this country. When we started our pension campaign, we said very clearly we must also increase the GIS. Why is this important? Because these are the poorest citizens in our country. They're the ones who build this great nation of ours, and they should not have to live in poverty. In 2011, then again in 2016, the GIS was increased in the last 2016 budget by 10%. I know one of those people who got a raise. She's my 92-year-old mother. She got $87.50 increase. I can tell you the difference that would make to her and all the moms and grandmothers and grandparents and parents in this country who were poor. It is the right thing to do, and it was long overdue. And for every penny that they get, it goes right back in the economy. It doesn't sit in some foreign bank account somewhere in the world. It is spent to ensure they can have a better life. And after a decade of struggle, when so many said it's not possible, it never is going to happen in our lifetime, we put on the most heroic fights education and mobilizing this country has ever seen to increase our Canada pension. And in 2016, we won a 33% to the Canada pension starting in 2018. That is your victory, my friend, with your hard work. This will make a significant difference to the young people starting out today in our country. The 11 million who will go to work today who do not have a workplace pension, who will depend on an improved Canada pension. But there are many challenges, my friend. Last year, the federal government introduced a bill called Bill C-27 without consultation and without notice. What does Bill C-27 will do? It allows employers and government to interfere with our defined benefit plan at their discretion, create uncertainty for retirees who could find their existing benefits and contribution they've made their entire life change without them having anything to do with it. This is a dangerous piece of legislation, my friends. Let me make this clear and loud. Bill Marneau, you got two choices, my friend. You can withdraw your legislation or you can change it. Otherwise, we're going to have the biggest shit fight you've ever seen in this country. We have no intention, after the decades of struggle to improve pension in this country, to allow this to happen. And we've made it clear to the government, we will do everything we can to change their direction. I hope they are listening and paying attention to what we're saying. Sisters and brothers, we've made some gains on the unemployment insurance system. The 910 eligibility and wait time for entrance is now done. The reduction in wait time period from 2 weeks to 1 week is done. The extension of EI compassionate care leave from 6 weeks to 6 months of benefits so workers could care for loved ones 6 months is done. But we still have a lot more work to do on EI, my friends, because far too many workers fall through the cracks and do not get benefit. We took on an important campaign last year to get a comprehensive ban of asbestos. Every year in our country, 2,000 Canadians die from asbestos-related disease. Many of them no fault of their own. In this campaign, for decades, we were not able to get this. We worked hard, we lobbied, and we mobilized. We won an important victory. Sisters and brothers, I know we will not stop these deaths anytime soon. But we also got the federal government to create a national registry for all federal buildings that they own or lease, so workers who work in those facilities will now be aware if asbestos is present. This was an important fight because, like the many and thousands of workers in this country who die every year, no fault of their own, I am one of those workers in this country who work with asbestos. Would I die someday because of this disease? I don't know. But I know for the many years I worked for General Motors, I was exposed to it because it was used very frequently in my establishment. I know the difference this will make for the future. It was the right decision, especially so much work was done by our Health and Safety Act with us. We also, of course, worked to change the temporary foreign workers program. Why was workers who come here to work are told they had to leave after their 4 years? So finally we end the 4 in and 4 out rule. We've got a lot more work to do. If you're good enough to work in this country, by God, you're good enough to stay here and build a life for yourself and your families. For many of the activists in the last convention, the debates about a national inquiry for missing and murdered Aboriginal women and girls was an important fight that we had to be there and to support. When the government announced, of course, such an inquiry, I was there on your behalf because I know now the difficult work starts. This issue is our national shame. It speaks to the systemic problems of our justice system in this country. How is it that 1,200 of our sisters could disappear and be murdered, yet the police and the justice system was not capable of responding? This will be a difficult inquiry, and our affiliate have pledged to work with the national, of course, to work with the Native Women's Association of Canada to ensure we can support their efforts. Sisters and brothers, this is important for the families. We recognize that. We have lots more work to do. Our movement has made great strides on gender rights. We have much more to do in terms of gender equality in pay. 1 in 3 women today still earn less than $15 an hour, compared to 1 in 5 men. Low wages throughout the women's lifetime will follow them all the way to their retirement. 30% of single women over 65 in our country still live in poverty. The government set out a framework back in 2004 for pay equity. We have waited long enough. Canada needs a proactive pay equity legislation now, and we intend to fight until they bring that law forward. Domestic violence is one of the most difficult issues for us to talk about. I'm so proud of my sister Barbara's and the Women and Human Rights Department for the work they have done, the surveys that you have participated in. Because like it or not, if you experience domestic violence at home, it's likely to follow you all the way into your workplace. That's why our work to improve the legislation and the regulation across this country to provide victims of domestic violence protection is important. The gains we have made in Manitoba and Ontario must now reach right across this country in Saskatchewan, and we're hoping at the federal level soon. Sisters and brothers, the training that we are doing with your activists and leadership is critical. But more importantly, I was said last night at the Human Rights Forum, and I want to be candid to my brothers in the room. We must take a greater responsibility to speak out against this violence. This is men's violence against women. We have an obligation and a role to play and a leadership role to play. Because when we say we will not accept this kind of behavior, that's when it will stop. Whether it's a friend, or a father, or a brother, or an uncle, we need to make it clear. It is 2017. We know far too much, and this should not continue to happen, my friends. So, of course, we're witnessing fallout from an election in the United States of Donald Trump. We have never seen a president of the United States so emboldened with his racist, bigoted, and anti-women views. And all of the bigots feel some impunity. They can crawl from under their rocks and just say whatever comes into their mouth. Sisters and brothers, I have never heard some of the most racist and sexist, homophobic, xenophobic rhetoric heard in recent history. The rise of the right-wing populism is real. We have to guard against it in our country. Islamophobia is an all-time high. And let's not be fooled. We in our own country is not immune to this reality. We can never forget what happened at that mosque in Quebec City, where a young man could walk into a mosque where people were praying and simply murdered them in cold blood. This didn't happen in the United States, it's happening in our own country. We have to do more to ensure and confront the rise of the right in our country. Canada needs to be unequivocal on this question. Take the side of working people to challenge inequality and confront racism, sexism, discrimination, and anti-Semitism. The labor movement needs to lead this fight. When we hear or see sexism, we must raise our voices, no matter where they happen in our country. When we hear racism and anti-Semitic comments are being made, we must speak out against it. When refugees are being turned away, we must open our arms and welcome them in our country, because that's been our tradition and who we are in this great nation of ours. Sisters and brothers, when refugees from Syria cried out for help and our government said they will welcome them to our land, the labor movement answered that call. We were there, and we will continue to be there to call on our government, business and labor to come together to support frontline organizations that settle refugees in our country, to sponsor families and ourselves, and to raise hundreds and thousands of dollars through the CLC and our affiliates, money that we gave to, of course, the Canadian Council of Refugees for the good work they do in resettlement throughout this country. And most importantly, we will continue to pressure government to continue to open our great countries to those the most in need in the world. There's some 60 million refugees in the world. We have only welcomed some 40,000 of recently. Germany alone welcomed over 1 million Syrian refugees. I know we can do more. Last fall, of course, we focused on the importance of the refugee work. And I hope this week, as you're here, the refugee tent is outside. You can go and look at the virtual reality. What happens to somebody when this happens in their community? Our Human Rights Conference was an important success that we held in Ottawa last fall. We had over 1,000 activists showed up to talk about how we can strengthen our solidarity. We had over 400 young workers who were there talking about their agenda and precarious work and how we can build a better future. But when it comes to the next generation, we cannot pretend that climate change is not the single greatest challenge facing our humanity in the 21st century. It's important for working people and their children will have immense change in our lives. In fact, warming climate is already putting pressures on our food supply and the livelihood of millions around the world today. Climate change is a crisis, and we have to face up to that, sisters and brothers. The CLC reject the argument and the notion that there's conflict between the economy and the environment. Those are false choices, and we will never accept them as a movement. We can build a sustainable environment in our country, and we can create jobs. Unions are already playing a leading role in response to climate change. The Blue Green Canada, the green economy, and we must continue pushing our government to adopt stronger policies and practice that will, of course, enable for a true just transition for workers in communities that will be disrupted. We must ensure the burden of adjusting to a greener economy is not felt disproportionately by workers and lower-income Canadians. The labour movement must commit to pushing our government to adopt a climate change plan. Sisters and brothers, that reduces greenhouse emission while at the same time able to grow our economy. We can achieve this by key investment in retrofitting our buildings and the houses in this country that was built at a time when we did not know we can use technology to reduce our consumption. Grow our clean energy sector, and truly have a national transportation strategy that will grow our public transit and bring high-speed rail finally to our country. Why is it that we must travel with Dr. Zhivago Railway in 2017? The labour movement has got an important role to play, my friends, and we must be engaged because others will make those decisions for us. So, sisters and brothers, this convention, of course, we're going to talk about many issues that confront us. Our plan over the next 3 years have to include, very important for Canadians and the labour movement and working people, a national pharmacare program. Why is it Why is it in 2017 the working family is still struggling to make a decision? Do you buy a grocery? Do you pay the rent, or do you get the medication? These are not choices working families should have to make in this country. This February, we started our campaign for our National Pharmacare Plan. Why is that important? Because it will make such a difference to our national healthcare system in this country. And what we are fighting for is a portable, accessible, and a comprehensive National Pharmacare Plan. One thing for sure, we started this campaign, we will amplify it in the fall. Just like our CPP campaign, we will not quit until we win in this country to get a National Pharmacare Plan for our nation. I cannot stress enough, of course, sisters and brothers, that not one gain, not one win over the last 3 years was possible without the commitment of our affiliates, large and small, national and international, our federations of labor and our activists, and our strong active labor councils who continue to do the hard work at the local level. I can't begin to tell you how I value the work of our labor councils that they do, but sometimes with very precious resources. They do so much to bring the message in their community. At this convention, you will discuss tomorrow a resolution to finally give our labor councils representation on our Canadian Council. I hope you support that resolution. They can finally be on our Canadian Council. We are here this week, of course, under the theme, Together for a Fairer Future. We'll continue to build on the success of our Fairness Work initiative. We ran TV ads, web commercials online, and our research continued to show that we are making a difference in the way Canadians see our labor movement. We've only just begun this work. It changed the hearts and minds of every Canadian out there. Research has shown we are doing and on the right track. We're showing Canadians we are still relevant. We're showing them how we can affect not only the lives of our members, but also the lives of every single worker and family in Canada. This week, we will show, of course, some of those videos on the big screens on our fairness campaign. Our collective work, of course, has not gone unnoticed. Just this past week, of course, we won some important awards. These are awards because of our fairness work videos. The next few days, we'll be mapping out our work for the next 3 years. This convention will be guided by 4 pillars: fairness, equality, green jobs, and organizing. What does it mean for a fair future? Fairness is about creating a future for us and the next generation of workers through good job with access to quality and public service, healthcare, and pharmacare, and education. It's also about the right for a $15 minimum wage throughout our country. We need equity for a fair future, where diversity and inclusion means a world free of discrimination and hate, where every member can participate in our movement to their full extent, where every worker can feel safe and be who they are without fear. It means a better representation of all equity-seeking group, whether it's women, workers of color, Indigenous people, LGBT, or person with disability. Green jobs for a fair future is about planning for a clean and healthy future, where the transition jobs and workers go along with this new economy, so we can sustain the earth for generations to come. And the last pillar is about organizing. We have work to do, sisters and brothers, to build our movement and to grow our movement. We want to win the hearts and minds of the unengaged members across this country. For those who need us but don't know a lot about us, the ones who are in the precarious economy and insecure jobs across this country. Growing our density will give us union power, and we can do everything in our power to make the condition ripe for legislative front. We must continue to build on the success of fairness and engage the unengaged members and connect them to the public message that we are relevant. And we are reaching them, my friends. We can show them that unions are the answer to precarity and inequality in this country. We're not a perfect movement. We're like families. We do disagree from time to time. We might even have fights with one another. But also like families, we have a history that transcends individuals like you and me. We share too much in common to allow disagreement to distract us, to cloud our way forward together. Our legacy to each generation of workers is one working together in their best interests against the system of profit for the minority at the expense of the majority in this country. This debate can unite us and make us even stronger. We can leave here divided if we allow ourselves to do that. Our recent victory proved that when we stand together, we are stronger and we are a powerful force in this country, and we can win. My friends, within a very short period of time, we will celebrate the 150 years of this great nation called Canada. And you will hear our politicians talk about all the great things. I want to remind you all, this country didn't become great because the politicians simply did it. It's because working people sacrifice to challenge the system, to make it better. We are the ones who made this country great in the last 150 years. And as we celebrate the 150th anniversary, we need to remind ourselves that we can still do better. And that path will start to this convention, and the hard work we'll do as we plan for the next 3 years. There's much to confront us as we go forward, but the reality is, my friends, we must come together to ensure we can build a stronger movement. On a very personal note, yes, the last 3 years have been an extremely exciting period for me. I love every minute of this job, traveling the country, engaging activists, walking the picket lines, speaking at your convention and conferences. I can't tell you the pride I get as I get the chance to represent you. I enjoy every bit of it. I'm energized, and I'm committed to the great work of this movement. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be your president for the last 3 years. I've been humbled, but I've been also energized by the commitment that I see in working people, trade unionists and activists, but the work that we can do to make a difference. Yes, of course, it comes with sacrifices. I have not had the opportunity to spend as much time with my family, and I know I do it at great cost sometimes. My daughter is here somewhere in a convention with her mom this morning. I have to tell you a funny story, because she asked me the other day, she said, "Daddy, is anybody running against you at the convention?" I said, "I really don't know, Sarah." She said, "You know, if you were not re-elected, you'll spend a lot of time with me." I says, "That may be a good thing." But my point is, as you know, all of us who do this kind of work recognize that there are sacrifices. I know my daughter understands what I do. I want to say to you, Sarah, my darling, I love you with all my heart. Thank you for allowing me to do what I do. I also want to say to my partner, who have given so much and sacrificed, Jenny On, I know I make too many excuses for why I'm busy, but I have to tell you, thank you for allowing me to do this. I enjoy every minute of it. I know it was not possible without your support. I love you dearly. Thank you. And sisters and brothers, thank you for the last 3 years. It's been both an honor and a joy to serve you. Thank you so much.
Got Marie in tears.